Why do some stories captivate us while others are quite forgettable? Why can a book or a movie with very little action in it hold our attention while others will feel quite flat no matter how many high-octane combat scenes get shoehorned in? While there probably isn't any single answer to this question, I do believe there's a blanket answer that probably applies in most circumstances, and that is stakes. Yeah. If nothing is at stake, we have no reason to be concerned, and therefore no reason to be drawn in by a story. And we want to be drawn in, because human beings are storytelling creatures. Whether, like me, you write novels, or whether you pitch business ideas to clients, or whether you merely tell funny jokes around a kitchen table, we all tell stories. Some of us are better at it than others. We've all had to endure a long-winded anecdote that ultimately went nowhere. We've all been pitched a product or a service that feels totally mismatched for us. And certainly we've all sat down excited to watch a movie, only to leave when the lights came up thinking, what the heck was that? We're all seeking something from a story, even if we can't put our finger specifically on what that something is. We just know at the end whether or not a story we have just heard is satisfying. My name is John Duffy. Like I said, I'm a writer. I've worked in podcasting, film, journalism, but fiction writing is my primary love. I've published several short stories and 2 novels now. So storytelling is something I've thought a lot about. You've probably all seen this visualization of a plot before, or something similar to it. It's a simple 3-act structure, a timeline from beginning to end along which some stuff happens, driving us ever forward towards a climax, after which we coast down safely to a resolution. Most pop films and shows are based on this pattern. Some excellent, some less than excellent. What makes a story, though, is that somewhere along this line, someone or something has to change. If not, you don't really have a story at all. You just have a list of events. Stakes are consequences, and consequences are what is at risk of change, for better or for worse. And here's the secret. In most great storytelling, what's at stake isn't actually what's at stake. Take, for instance, the most popular Christmas movie of all time, Die Hard. Yeah! What's at stake? Is it the money in the vault that Hans Gruber is trying to steal? The lives of his hostages? Sure. But what else? After a multi-hour firefight with international goons, John McClane recognizes that he was not receptive to his wife's professional growth and that the split in their family is actually his fault, not hers. By the end of the film, his wife Holly, seeing what a dedicated man and husband he is, goes back to using her married name, and they walk away happily together in the end. In It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey recognizes the innate value of every human life, including his own, which he was so ready to throw away at the beginning of the film. In Pulp Fiction, after being saved by a miracle, Jules, his killer instinct restrained, is set to a life of walking the earth. In Toy Story, Woody learns to accept the new obnoxious toy, Buzz Lightyear. Moana reminds her people they were once voyagers. Han Solo returns to help destroy the Death Star. The mean girls in Mean Girls stop being mean girls. Think of any film you've ever enjoyed, and I guarantee you there's an example in it of change. A change of heart, a change of behavior, a change of perspective. Now, I've been citing a lot of films which might be weird for a novelist, but to be sure, the presence of change is still very important in literature. It may not be the ultimate point of a work, but rather serve to convey the point. And probably the most famous example of change in storytelling is literary. It's from the Bible, the book of Acts. Saul, a Roman Jew, persecutor of Christians, is on the road from Jerusalem to Damascus when he's stricken blind by a great light. He has a vision of Jesus. 3 days later, his vision returned to him. He's a Christian convert, goes on to found churches. He's later anointed a saint. To this day, we still use the expression, a road to Damascus moment, to describe somebody who's undergoing great change or realignment. But what never feels good in any story is an unearned change. Let's say you sit down to watch Armageddon, and after an hour and 40 minutes of Bruce Willis not trusting Ben Affleck's drilling instincts or his capability to make a good husband to his daughter, Liv Tyler, he all of a sudden switches on a dime and says, you know what, you drew the short straw, but tell you what, go home, marry my daughter, take over my company, I'll stay here and die on the asteroid. Probably feel pretty inauthentic. We have a word for inauthentic endings: contrived. We hate contrived endings. We all live too much life and carry the weight of too much experience to forgive an ending that feels forced or artificial. As you might guess, I can be very frustrating to go to the movies with. We expect our characters to grow in our stories. We expect them to learn and to hopefully become better. But we expect that to be the result of trial and work. We expect a long sequence of incidents to lead to a dramatic change. So if we see a major shift in character or circumstance without them, we feel cheated. When fed to the audience in the right way, at the right time, with just the right amount of resistance, your story should culminate in a moment where time splits between the was and the is, between the way things were before and the way they will be now. And that is the tipping point. I think you can all imagine that if you wanted to chop down a girthy oak tree, you would know that one whack with a hand axe would not be enough to topple it. Cutting down a tree, we take a saw, we make a wedge cut and a back cut, removing enough wood in just the right places while also hammering in wedges until the weight of it takes itself over. The same is true in storytelling. The larger the change you want to achieve, the more cuts you must make, and the more wedges you must insert to ensure that your change feels earned. Your audience should see the work you've done along the way, so that maybe they won't know exactly how everything is going to fall into place. But when you get to the end, it should feel as though they could have predicted it, because it should be the only ending that makes sense. That is satisfying. Now, bridging the gap between the literary and the film, I ask you to consider a work that is rife with stakes, Lord of the Rings. Every person in the fellowship changes. Boromir recognizes it was folly to think he could control the power of the ring. Legolas and Gimli, they give up their prejudices for each other's dwarvish and elvish backgrounds. Merry and Pippin, they grow from being rambunctious, mischievous young hobbits into self-sacrificing warriors. Aragorn gives up his sad boy wandering and takes on the mantle as king of Gondor. And then there's Sam and Frodo. Now, Sam, we desperately don't want him to change because he's innocent and kind and loyal. He's a garden-loving homebody. He's the quintessential heart of the Shire. Along the way, he's asked to find his courage, and he does. And he gets to go home emotionally intact. Now, Frodo, his struggle is also to not change, to not let the ring break him, to not let it consume him and make him its slave the way it did Gollum. But it does. The evil power of the ring is too much for him. And in the end, spoiler alert, Frodo fails, even after Sam carries him the last few steps of the way. In that ultimate scene in Mount Doom where Frodo just can't bear to cast the ring into the fire, we as an audience, a reader, are both disheartened yet understanding. Why? Because we've seen the work. We've seen him step and fight and struggle and stumble and briefly overcome only to stumble again until in the very end, he is totally changed. And he is changed. Even after the ring's destroyed, he can't go back to everything he loves. He goes across the sea to the undying lands, and it's a very sorrowful ending, but it rings true to us because of what we know from life. Perhaps from what we know of soldiers who have served in combat or people who have survived assault or domestic violence. We know that some wounds are too deep to fully heal. If Frodo had gone back to the Shire and just merrily drank flagons full of ale down at the Green Dragon with his buddies happily ever after, that would have felt contrived. That would have felt forced. We as an audience would have felt cheated if what we were told was at stake was actually safe and secure all along. Now, I know most of you do not write movies or plays or books, but like I said at the outset, we are all storytellers. Be that regaling our family with tales of our vacation adventures, trying to convince a police officer not to give us a speeding ticket, or simply trying to help our children fall asleep at night. And now that you have this new framework for understanding what makes a story successful, I hope you'll be better at all of those things. Or if nothing else, that you'll be more frustrating to go to the movies with. And to make sure of that, let's jam. All together, we are going to do a quick story-building situation. It's totally improv. I have no idea how it's going to work out, so forgive me if it's awful. But we're going to build a story from the ground up that's going to have stakes and change. So someone please just give me a character name. Shout it. Jeremy! What does Jeremy do for a living? I heard plumber first. Jeremy the plumber. What does Jeremy want? Food, love, and ice cream. They're all kind of the same thing. Jeremy the plumber wants love, but what's holding Jerry the plumber back from getting love? His ex-girlfriend. That be. But what's actually holding him back is internally. So she's maybe there preventing him from going out. Every time she sees Jeremy the plumber out, he's finally gotten all the muck and gunk off of himself. He's finally at the club, and he's trying to sidle up to some girls, and there's the ex-girlfriend like, you loser, and she ruins it for him. But what's actually holding him back in here? Fear. He's self-worth. Self-worth. That's a perfect one. His self-worth. Jeremy he doesn't feel that being a plumber is an attractive job. He feels like I'm covered in toilet water and things all day and sink clogs, and so he goes to the club, and yeah, the ex-girlfriend there, and she's ruining it for him, but he's also doubting himself. So how is he going to overcome this doubt? What does he have to do? Save a puppy. Yeah. So one day he's been losing it in the club. The girlfriend's always there blocking him, and he's just thinks it's never going to happen for him. But one day he's in the park, and he sees a lovely young lady, and her puppy is up in a tree for some reason. It thinks it's a cat, and what does Jeremy have? He might not have a lot of self-confidence, but he's got a lot of tools in the truck. And so he goes over and he gets his toilet snake, and he's able to throw it up there, and start reeling it in. The puppy chases it and comes down, and he's able to hand it back to this woman, and she's like, my name's Brandine. And so, but what does he learn? He actually learns that, the whole time, it really wasn't my ex-girlfriend holding me back. I used that as an excuse. Really, deep down, I had a lot of self-doubt. I spend a lot of time in crawl spaces and under sinks, and I get in my own head, But once I was out there in the bright, shiny light of day, I realized some of my ingenuity and the things I've learned plumbing actually make me kind of a cool guy. Maybe I shouldn't be so hard on myself, and now I get to coast safely down towards the resolution with Brandine. I don't think this is the next New York Times bestseller that we've created here tonight, but you can see how you can build a story from the ground up. You just need to make sure that whatever it is you're trying to achieve, the changes you're seeking to achieve, that you make your characters work for them so that in the end we feel satisfied. Thank you for listening to me tonight. Please enjoy the rest of the show.